Welcome to the Orchid Advisors Compliance Training Series, Export Controls, ITAR License Exemptions. The ITAR contains several different types of license exemptions, and in this video we will examine some of the more common. However, it is important to use extreme care when utilizing a license exemption, as improper use of an exemption is a violation of the ITAR and may, in certain circumstances, constitute an aggravating factor in determining civil or criminal liability. To be eligible to use any ITAR exemption, parties must meet the following qualifications: current registration with DDTC as an exporter or broker. The transaction must not involve any embargoed or proscribed country listed in ITAR 126.1. This includes being from or acting on behalf of any such country. Eligible to receive a license. Exports for which congressional notification is required are ineligible for a license exemption. In addition, it is important to remember record-keeping requirements and the Automated Export System Electronic Export Information Filing requirements. License exemptions for temporary imports, ITAR Section 123.4, lists the various license exemptions for temporary imports of defense articles. Paragraph A allows for the temporary import and subsequent export of unclassified U.S. origin defense articles for up to 4 years for the following reasons. 1. Inspection, testing, service, repair, and one-to-one replacement, but no enhancement, modification, or improvement, and the article is subsequently returned to the country from which it was exported. 2. Enhancement, upgrade, or incorporation into another item already approved for export. 3. Exhibition, demonstration, or marketing in the U.S., and subsequent return to the country from which it was exported. 4. The article is rejected for permanent import and is being returned to the country from which it was shipped. Paragraph B allows for the temporary import, but not the subsequent export, of unclassified defense articles for incorporation into another article, not already approved for export, or for improvement or any modification that changes the article's basic performance or productivity. Unlike the exemptions under Paragraph A we just described, this exemption can be used for foreign-made articles. However, a DSP-5 export license must be obtained to export articles brought into the U.S. under this exemption. The article can either be returned to the country from which it was shipped or exported to another country. The ITAR sets forth specific criteria that must be met to utilize any of the exemptions under 123.4a or b. Failure to satisfy these requirements, including certain declarations at the time of import, will trigger certain disclosures to DDTC. In the event a foreign customer sends back an item for repair or testing without the knowledge of the U.S. company, it is quite possible the import declarations will not be properly made to utilize a 123.4 exemption. In this scenario, the U.S. company must notify DDTC of the improper entry and apply for a DSP-5 export license to send the repaired item back to the customer. License exemption to export minor firearm parts and components. ITAR Section 123.17 allows for the permanent export of minor firearm parts and components without a license, as long as the total value of the parts does not exceed $100. This exemption cannot be used to export barrels, cylinders, receivers, or frames, or complete breech mechanisms. The ITAR also allows for the export of certain firearms, parts, components, and accessories to Canada, as long as the total value does not exceed $500. The end user in Canada will dictate the firearm platforms that qualify. 1. If the end user is a Canadian citizen, then the exemption applies to parts, components, accessories, or attachments for firearms in U.S. Munitions List Category 1. Specifically excluded are barrels, cylinders, receivers or frames, complete breech mechanisms, full auto firearms and their parts and components. 2. If the end user is the Canadian federal government, a Canadian provincial government, or a Canadian municipal government, the exemption applies to all firearm parts, components, accessories, and attachments, including full auto firearms and parts and components for such firearms. Again, the dollar limit on these Canadian exemptions is $500, but the dollar limit for all other countries is $100. In addition, the exporter must make all necessary declarations via the Automated Export System, or AES. License exemptions for temporary exports of firearms and ammunition. Section 123.17 contains an exemption for U.S. persons, with the exception of U.S. military or government personnel, to temporarily export up to 3 non-automatic firearms and up to 1,000 ammunition cartridges, as long as the person declares the articles to U.S. Customs and Border Protection at departure, including the internal transaction number from the electronic export information filed in the Automated Export System. The firearms or ammunition must be carried with the person's baggage, which can be either accompanied or unaccompanied, but it cannot be mailed. Lastly, the firearms and ammunition must be for the person's own exclusive use and not for re-export or other transfer of ownership. The person must declare his or her intent to return the articles to the United States. Agreement exemption for training. Section 124.2 states that a technical assistance agreement is not required to provide training to a foreign person in basic operation or maintenance of defense articles already lawfully exported or authorized for export to the same recipient. No intermediate or depot-level training can be provided using this exemption. License exemptions for technical data. Section 124.3 allows for the export of unclassified technical data without a license if it is in furtherance of a technical assistance agreement or a manufacturing license agreement. However, it is important to ensure the technical data matches exactly what is described in the respective agreement, because to exceed the scope constitutes an export without a license and a violation of the ITAR. In addition, Section 125.4 contains several license exemptions for technical data. As long as the technical data is not exported for purposes of offshore procurement or for producing defense articles, except in very limited circumstances listed in 125.4c. These exemptions apply strictly to the export of technical data and do not include provision of a defense service. Consequently, it is highly possible that an activity that you will undertake for a foreign customer will still require a license for a defense service, even though the technical data itself is exempt from licensing. For example, paragraph B5 allows for the export without a license of technical data that pertains to basic operations, maintenance, and training related to a defense article already lawfully exported or authorized for export to the same recipient. No intermediate or depot-level information can be provided using this exemption. Paragraph B6, allowing for the export without a license of technical data related to firearms not in excess of .50 caliber, is also exempt from the licensing requirements, except this does not include technical data containing detailed design, development, production, or manufacturing information. Thank you for watching this segment of our video training series. Viewers are encouraged to seek professional advice prior to assessment, implementation, or execution.